There are two main ways to run any Sage engine-based Command & Conquer game at higher than 30 FPS, without breaking it in terms of physics or game speed. Both cost about the price of a coffee, and have pros and cons associated with them. I'm going to explain these tools to you, show you my results, and then give you my recommendation on what I think is best. Lastly, I'll run you through how to buy, install, and use each of them. Links are in the description, sections are marked in the timeline, and let's get to it. The first method is to use a program on Steam called Lossless Scaling. It increases the frame rate by generating extra frames using machine learning, the same as tools like Nvidia's DLSS and AMD's FSR frame generation. The benefit of lossless scaling is that it happens over top the game, so nothing is digging into the code or how it runs. Theoretically, the game will run exactly how it does normally, just with a smoother frame rate. Lossless scaling also works with any game, not just Command & Conquer, and you can choose how many frames you want to generate. You aren't limited to just 60 FPS. With CNC, where every game since Generals is of course locked to 30 FPS, you could apply a 2, 3, or 4x multiplier to get 60, 90, or 120 frames respectively. Now just a quick note here about the footage you're seeing. For whatever reason, I just cannot get the lossless scaling footage to record through OBS. You're supposed to be able to do it by setting them both to administrator mode, but for whatever reason, mine just will not work. So if there is a specific lossless scaling point that I'm showing you, it will be recorded on my camera of my screen, which I know is kind of cursed, but it should get the point across. Otherwise, you will just be seeing regular Command & Conquer footage at 30 FPS. Trust me, it is at 60 frames when you play it yourself. Another benefit to the program is its namesake, lossless scaling, which aims to upscale games to higher resolutions, just as DLSS, FSR, and XESS do, primarily to increase performance on systems that struggle with running whatever game it is at their native resolution. But since Sage engine-based Command & Conquer games are all quite old, I doubt you'd be having any trouble rendering them at a solid 30 FPS, so this is irrelevant for our use case here. But if you did want to use the program to upscale other games, then you could. The second option open to you is a program called SageMetalTool, or SMT. This is a more focused program than lossless scaling, being built specifically for Sage engine RTS games. So that's Command & Conquer Generals, 0 Hour, Tiberium Wars, Kane's Wrath, Tiberian Twilight, and Red Alert 3, plus Battle for Middle-earth 1 and 2. Theoretically, it'll also work with any mods for those games, such as Generals Evolution for Red Alert 3, or Tiberium Essence for Command & Conquer 3. While it lacks the universal application of lossless scaling, being made specifically for Sage has its own benefits. You of course get the 60 FPS frame rate. However, this is achieved through some clever changes to the guts of the game, so you avoid any potential visual artifacts or GPU overhead associated with generating fake frames. You also get an unlocked camera zoom to more of a level than you would ever need, widescreen and extended resolution support, an integrated in-game menu with extra game modes, options, and a scripting console, and honestly quite a few other things. Here's a list, pause if you want to read them all. So that's what lossless scaling and SMT claim to do. Here's my results with how they worked in the real world. Lossless scaling is super easy to use. Just buy and download it through Steam, choose your settings, click scale, and return to your game. And FYI, the game will need to be in windowed or borderless full screen to work. Starting with a 2x frame multiplier, so that's going from 30 to 60 FPS, the results are basically flawless, and the game looks and feels great. In the start, I actually could have sworn that everything was moving faster because of how much I was used to seeing CNC3 at 30 FPS. Unfortunately, if you increase the scaling multiplier, visual problems do become a bit more apparent though. Bringing it up to 4x, so that's 120 FPS, does look pretty great for the most part, but things like this morphing UI and haloing artifacts are a bit distracting, and it does impact my game experience, I think more than if I just left it at 30 FPS. So for that reason I'd say just keep it at 2x, 60 frames. And thankfully, because of the campaign cutscenes and cinematics running at 50 FPS, at least in Tiberium Wars and Red Alert 3, you shouldn't find any interpolation issues there. So with that you might be wondering, if it's best to keep it at 60 FPS and not make use of the option to crank it higher, why even consider it over SMT? Well, let me tell you how that performs first, and then I'll sum everything up afterwards. Getting SMT to run is basically just as easy as lossless scaling. Once you've paid through Patreon, just download the exe and run it from literally anywhere. It'll auto-detect your games and your mods too, all going well. Then you just set the resolution you want and go for it. The 60 FPS frame rate is applied by default, and it looks great. I haven't noticed any anomalies, like the ones that lossless scaling can potentially introduce, though only at higher multipliers. The changes to the camera that SMT brings are perhaps the second most important thing it adds. While I don't think CNC3 and others are as egregiously zoomed in as some other RTS games, being able to have more control over the camera is always a good thing. I know a lot of you guys out there love to zoom out, so this one's for you. As mentioned earlier, SMT does bring a lot of different things to the table, but I'm going to keep the scope of this video focused in on the main event. But if you do try SMT out, I'd encourage you to explore everything it has to offer, like the scripting console and integrated options menu. So, which one should you use? Well, to be honest, you can't really make a bad choice, and it comes down to which extra features you'd prefer to have and make the most of. If you only care about a higher frame rate, then you can't go wrong with lossless scaling. It's based inside Steam, and runs flawlessly with any game, not just Command & Conquer. Plus there's the extra benefit of the actual titular feature of upscaling, if that's useful to you. If you're only looking for a solution to Command & Conquer though, then it's hard to look past SMT. While it's a bit more of annoying of a setup having its own exe outside of Steam that you'll need to keep somewhere and use to launch the games, the feature set it offers is unmatched, and if you don't care about going higher than 60 FPS and would enjoy features like extended zoom, then this is a great choice. With all that in mind though, it does beg the question, if SMT doesn't use FrameGen to achieve 60 FPS, is there any reason you couldn't use both it and lossless scaling to achieve 120 FPS with a 2x multiplier, the same ratio we had originally, going from 30 to 60? Well, yeah, you absolutely can. Obviously you're paying for both programs here, but that's the only real downside. Interpolation artifacts are basically unnoticeable with this version of 120 FPS, versus if you just did it through lossless scaling. So if you've got a high refresh rate monitor, that's say 120 or 144 Hz, I'd say go for it. You can even use lossless scaling to dial in an exact target frame rate to make the most of that 144 or 165 Hz monitor. And I've got to say, General Resolution at 4K, 144 Hz, with a rock solid matching frame rate, whew, it looks pretty darn good. Now, stick around if you want to learn how to install either of these options. Otherwise, decide what path you want to take and get out there. I hope I've improved your Command & Conquer experience. Search for lossless scaling on Steam. It's this one here with the big yellow duck. Boot it up and create a preset for simplicity's sake. I've called mine CNC 60 FPS. Now there's not too many settings you need to change here, just set the type to the most recent version, mine's 3.1 as of making this video, make sure the mode is set to fixed, and that your multiplier is set for 2. This means you'll get 2x of whatever your base frame rate is. In this case, it's going to be 30 FPS the whole time, as that's what Sage Engine RTS games are locked to. Put that aside for a sec and boot up your game of choice. I'll be using Tiberium Wars. Now something important to note is that the game will need to be set to either windowed or borderless full screen mode for the program to work. You can do that easily by adding this line to the game's launch options on Steam or the EA app, where X and Y res is your resolution. From here, it's smooth sailing. Once the game's open, just Alt-Tab back into lossless scaling and click Scale. Then jump back to the game, and in 5 seconds, it will apply your chosen settings to whatever program you have active at that time, which should be Command & Conquer. You'll know it's worked by seeing the FPS drawn at the top left. You can mess with the settings on your own to try out other frame rates and such, but otherwise, you're all set. As far as I know, unfortunately you do have to do this every time you play, but for getting 60 FPS Command & Conquer, it's a small price to pay. To use SMT, you first need to subscribe to its creator on Patreon. Download the program using the link provided and extract the contents somewhere, anywhere, it doesn't matter. Now run the program and you should see a list of installed games and mods. Note that you'll need to have booted them at least once for them to show in this list. Then it's as simple as choosing your game and setting your preferred resolution. I'll use General Resolution for Alert 3. And if you're only after the higher frame rate and extended zoom, that's all you need to do. If you do want to go further, there is a menu that will appear in-game where you can mess with settings and whatnot. I'll let you explore that in your own time, there is quite a lot there. Now, lastly, if you want to use both programs together, it's as simple as doing all the SMT stuff first, remembering that you'll need to launch in windowed mode, and once you've got the game running, complete the steps for lossless scaling. We're now running at 120 FPS with extended camera zoom at 4K. A pretty good way to bring in the big 2.6, I reckon. Thanks for watching, and if you liked that, I reckon you'll like this video looking at 2 community-made successors to Command & Conquer Generals.